Hyundai has carved a formidable reputation in the world of rally racing, becoming a dominant force in the modern era. The Hyundai World Rally Team has been a fixture in the World Rally Championship, achieving significant success. They've secured multiple manufacturers' titles in 2019 and 2020, as well as the Drivers' Championship in 2019. More recently, in 2024, Thierry Neuville won the Drivers' Championship, showcasing their engineering prowess and drivers' talent. Beyond rallying, Hyundai's N Performance division also made strides in touring car racing, demonstrating their commitment to high-performance vehicles. However, they've yet to venture into the pinnacle of motorsport, Formula 1, as a full constructor. This raises an intriguing question. How would Hyundai, with its proven track record in rallying, fare as a standalone constructor in the highly competitive world of Formula 1? To explore this, I loaded up F124, created a brand new MyTeam save featuring its incredible Hyundai livery, and simulated the next 10 seasons to find out. For the inaugural season, the driver lineup will consist of former Formula 2 champion Théo Pourchaire, alongside fellow Formula 2 driver Dennis Hauger. But before we begin, YouTube says that 92% of my viewers are not subscribed to my channel, so if that is you, please press the subscribe button as it helps me out a ton. The 2024 season in our simulated world saw McLaren emerge as the Constructors' Champions, echoing their real-life ambitions. Mercedes secured a strong second place, followed by Ferrari and Red Bull. Aston Martin rounded out the top 5, with the newly formed Hyundai team making a solid debut, finishing 6th in the constructors' standings. Théo Pourchaire leveraged his Formula 2 experience to secure a respectable P10 finish, while Dennis Hauger, also making his F1 debut, finished in P14. Moving over to the Drivers' Championship, which sees the Ferrari driver of Charles Leclerc finishing in 3rd place, much like his team did. Similarly, the runner-up this season will see the Mercedes driver of George Russell finishing over 130 points behind the newest world champion, after Lando Norris pretty much dominates the sport to take his first ever title. He would win a total of 11 races throughout the 16 race season, with 4th place Max Verstappen managing to take a total of 3 wins. George Russell and Charles Leclerc would win round the season out with just a single win each. The end of this season sees the retirement of long-term driver Valtteri Bottas, as he has decided to retire from the sport, with Kevin Magnussen making the move over to the Kick Sauber team. Théo Pourchaire is poached from Hyundai, with Jack Doohan being brought in as his replacement. Dennis Hauger is also dropped by Hyundai, with Kimi Antonelli being brought in for his alternate universe debut. There will also be some big regulation changes affecting both the aerodynamics and powertrain departments heading into Season 2. The regulation changes does throw up a new Constructors' Champion, as the Silver Arrows of Mercedes managed to return to the top of the table, finishing ahead of McLaren and Ferrari. Hyundai maintained their position, finishing in P6, with Jack Doohan falling down to P16, while Kimi Antonelli has a very strong debut season to finish as high as P9. Once again, Charles Leclerc will finish in P3, this time with 233 points, while the reigning champion of Lando Norris falls down to 2nd place, failing to retain his title by just a single point. This season will see George Russell take his first ever Drivers' Championship, beating out Norris by just a single point, despite both drivers winning a total of 6 races each. 3rd place Charles Leclerc was able to win 3 races this season, with Russell's teammate Lewis Hamilton return to the top by winning just once. The one move at the end of this season will see the retirement of Daniel Ricciardo, as he is replaced by the returning Dennis Hauger in the Racing Bulls team. In the 3rd season, McLaren will return to the top of the Constructors' Championship with a very solid gap to the Mercedes team behind. Ferrari remain in 3rd place ahead of Red Bull and Aston Martin, but this season will see the Hyundai team falling down to P7, being overtaken by Alpine. Jack Doohan shows consistency once again, finishing in P16, with Kimi Antonelli unfortunately dropping a few positions down to P11. Once again, the reigning champion is unable to win back-to-back titles, as former champion George Russell falls down to 3rd place, finishing behind both McLaren drivers. Oscar Piastri makes his first appearance in this video, finishing just ahead of George Russell, but will fall 17 points shy of the Drivers' Championship, as Lando Norris wins his 2nd driver's title, scoring 289 points. He would win the most races this season after he stood tall a total of 7 times, with his teammate winning 5 races, while George Russell finished this season with a total of 4 race wins. Not many driver moves this season, with the youngest driver on the grid of Fernando Alonso shockingly deciding to retire from Formula 1. Yuki Tsunoda is then given a transfer to the Aston Martin team, with Ayumu Iwasa being brought in by the Racing Bulls as Tsunoda's replacement. There will be some big regulation changes, with the chassis and powertrain departments being here alongside the durability team. Despite the major changes, the Papaya McLaren team remain on top of the Constructors' Championship, providing an incredibly dominant performance, scoring over 130 points more than Ferrari. Hyundai capitalised on the regulation changes, overtaking Alpine to once again finish in P6. Jack Doohan is able to improve on his finish, gaining a position up to P15, while Kimi Antonelli also gains a position, finishing in P10. Third place in the first 2 seasons went to Charles Leclerc, with him returning to finish ahead of his teammate but once again in 3rd place. McLaren drivers finished in a 1-2, with the former champion failing to retain once again, as Lando Norris falls to P2, while Oscar Piastri tops the championship by just 3 points. Both McLaren drivers would be shared on race wins, with the pair winning 6 races each. Leclerc once again wins 3 races in 3rd place, while his teammate Carlos Sainz would win his first race of the simulation. At the end of season 4, the Kick-Sauber driver of Kevin Magnussen will be retiring, with Oliver Behrman being brought in to make his debut next year. Aston Martin have also decided to drop Lance Stroll in favour of Dennis Hauger, with Deruvula being brought in by the Racing Bulls. There will also be some small aerodynamic changes going into season 5. Before we hit the midpoint of the simulation, mid-season driver moves come into effect, with Theo Pourchaire being replaced by Jehan Deruvula. Lance Stroll was then given another chance in F1, but this time with the Racing Bulls team. McLaren continue their complete dominance of the sport, scoring 703 points, compared to the runners-up Mercedes who only scored 389. Ferrari finished in 3rd place but just ahead of Aston Martin. The newest F1 team Hyundai fall down to P8 after a surprisingly difficult season. Kimi Antonelli falls down to P14 and Jack Doohan falls all the way down to P19. One of the recurring faces in this simulation is former champion George Russell, who will take 3rd place position once again behind the McLaren drivers. The tradition of champions failing to retain their title continues, with Oscar Piastri falling down to P2, but just 9 points behind Lando Norris, who will take his 3rd title in 5 years. Piastri would be unfortunate to finish in 2nd place after he would take 7 race wins, while Norris would only take 6. Yuki Tsunoda comes out of nowhere to win 2 races in his Aston Martin, with George Russell also taking just a single win. Piastri must have been pretty upset with P2, leaving McLaren without a seat at any other team, with McLaren signing Theo Pourchaire after being dropped mid-season. Sergio Perez also leaves F1 after deciding to retire, with Iwasa being promoted to the senior Red Bull team. Jack Doohan is poached from HYUNDAI, with Nico Hülkenberg moving to the newest team. The last open seat at Haas is then given to Enzo Fittipaldi, who will make his debut next year. From this year onwards, the season will consist of just 10 races, with McLaren making the most of this reduced number. They remain at the top of the Constructors' Championship, almost doubling the points tally of Mercedes, who finish ahead of Ferrari despite both teams scoring the same amount of points. Hyundai improve on their results from last year and move up to P7, after Kimi Antonelli is able to move up to P12, while the newest signing Nico Hülkenberg fails to score points and finishes in P20. Max Verstappen actually makes his first appearance of the simulation, taking his Red Bull to finish in 3rd place on the same amount of points as P2 of George Russell. And for the first time in this video, the reigning champion is able to retain his title after Lando Norris wins the World Drivers' Championship with 249 points. He would absolutely dominate this season, winning 9 out of 10 races, with runner-up George Russell taking just a single race win. Now at the end of this season, Lewis Hamilton decides to retire from Formula 1, without ever making his historic move to Ferrari. However, his new teammate at Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, does the opposite move to drive for Mercedes. Ferrari will go and sign Frederik Vesti to drive next season. The Hyundai team also decide to drop Nico Hülkenberg, in favour of free agent Oscar Piastri to take them to the next level. There will also be some small regulation changes coming into effect, with both the chassis and durability departments being changed. The regulation changes were only small last year, meaning McLaren were once again able to win the Constructors' Championship, with Red Bull finishing quite close after Ferrari falls to 4th. Hyundai continued to improve from last season, moving up to a solid P5 finish, with Kimi Antonelli finishing in P10, while the newest driver of Oscar Piastri proves his worth to finish in P5. In just his 2nd season with the Red Bull team, Ayumu Iwasa is able to put a very consistent performance to finish in 3rd place, behind his teammate as Max Verstappen finishes as the runner-up. Now after breaking the curse last season, Lando Norris is able to win a 3rd driver's title in a row, taking his total to 5 championships. He would go on to win a total of 7 races this season, with Max Verstappen rounding up the season winning just 3 times. Despite being signed at the end of last season, Ferrari have already decided to replace Frederik Vesti, bringing in the current champion of Lando Norris, who is set to drive in red next year. Lance Stroll retires from the Racing Bulls team, with Nico Hülkenberg returning, while Victor Martins is signed to fill the last seat at McLaren. The powertrain department will then be hit with some regulation changes for Season 8. This year finally sees something new, with McLaren being dethroned by the Silver Arrows of Mercedes, returning to the top for the first time since Season 2. McLaren finished as the runners-up but just 22 points behind, with Hyundai continuing to improve, recording their highest finish so far in 3rd place. This is largely to do with both drivers having very impressive seasons, with Kimi Antonelli rising up to P8 and Oscar Piastri finishing inside the top 3. He finishes ahead of Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, but will have Theo Pourchaire just ahead of him, finishing in P2. This season sees a former champion returning to the top, with George Russell winning his second Drivers' Championship after Lando Norris falls down to P7 in his new Ferrari. Race wins were definitely more varied this year, with 6 different drivers winning a race. The champion George Russell, the runner-up Théo Pourchaire, third place Piastri and the other McLaren driver of Victor Martins would all win twice, with Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc winning just a single race each. There will be some more driver moves this season after the retirement of Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz. The team then go and sign Yuki Tsunoda after his early potential, with Zhou Guanyu making the switch to Aston Martin. McLaren and Red Bull strike a deal to swap drivers, with Verstappen driving for McLaren and Martins will drive for Red Bull next year. Frédéric Vesti is also brought back into the sport to drive for the Kick Sauber team in the penultimate season. There's just one season to go after this year, with McLaren once again returning to the top just at the right time. Hyundai are proving themselves as a top team, with the possibility of them winning the Constructors' Championship next year. Now they would only finish 40 points behind the McLaren team, with Kimi Antonelli recording his highest finish with P6. Last year's runner-up and race winner Théo Pourchaire drops down to 3rd place this season, after being overtaken by the Hyundai driver of Oscar Piastri, who manages to secure a 2nd place finish. This year will see a new champion for the simulation, as Max Verstappen is able to take his new McLaren car to the very top, only outscoring Piastri by 5 points. Race wins were not as varied as last season, with the top 2 drivers only being able to win, with Max Verstappen taking a total of 6 race wins, while Oscar Piastri only took 4. Former 2-time champion George Russell fell out of title contention this season and has decided to call it a day in Formula 1. Mercedes then poached a driver from their opposition, with Max Verstappen moving away from his title-winning car. Oscar Piastri then returns to the McLaren team, with Alex Albon moving to Hyundai. Red Bull and Alpine swap drivers, with Victor Martins once again being involved, while Esteban Ocon will join the Red Bull team. The last open seat at Williams is then given to Jack Crawford, who will make his debut in the final season. Alongside the moves, there was also some big regulation changes, with the aerodynamics, chassis and durability departments all being affected for Season 10. Now despite all the changes to the regulations and the driver markets, McLaren end the simulation the same way they started, by finishing at the top of the standings and winning the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes returned to finishing as runners-up, with Hyundai being unfortunate to finish the final season in 3rd place. Losing Oscar Piastri proved to be a big issue, with the drivers only managing to finish in P4, while Alex Albon finished in P6 in his first year. Now the top 3 is filled of former champions, with Lando Norris returning to the top 3 for the first time driving for Ferrari. 2nd place goes to the reigning champion of Max Verstappen, who is unable to retain his title after moving to Mercedes. This allows for Oscar Piastri to win yet another Drivers' Championship in his return to McLaren for the final season of this simulation. Piastri would take a total of 6 race wins across the entire season, with Max Verstappen taking 3 in his Mercedes car, with Lando Norris returning to the top step just once for his first time in Ferrari. But that is 10 seasons simulated, with the Hyundai team being added into Formula 1. Now let's take a look at the numbers from all 10 seasons to see who had the strongest performance and who was the biggest flop. Firstly, only 2 teams would finish at the top of the Constructors' Championship, with Mercedes winning just twice and McLaren wiping the floor after winning a total of 8 titles. Moving over to the Drivers' Championship, and there were 4 drivers who were able to secure the grandest prize, with Max Verstappen surprisingly only winning once. George Russell was able to win the championship on 2 occasions, with Oscar Piastri winning a total of 3 titles. But coming out on top will be Lando Norris, who will take half of the Drivers' Championships during the 10 seasons. And across those 10 seasons there were a total of 10 drivers, who were able to call themselves a race winner. Both Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz would win just a single race each, with Théo Pourchaire, Victor Martins and Yuki Tsunoda all winning twice. Charles Leclerc was able to win a total of 8 races behind George Russell, who won 15, and Max Verstappen, who would win 16. Oscar Piastri had a very strong performance, taking a total of 30 race wins, with Lando Norris winning a whopping 53 times out of a possible 130 races. But that is going to wrap up today's video. Now if you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I really want to try and hit 10,000 subscribers at some point this year, so if you've not already, please press the subscribe button to show some support. Links will be in the description for all my various social media, including my Discord server, which is the best way to receive updates about uploads, but also talk to me and other fans of the channel. But that is going to be all from me today, so have a good day, evening or night, wherever you are, and goodbye.